The Incest Diary by Anonymous. Whew. What to say about this book? You know, I find it interesting when a book is published and the author opts to remain unidentified, not even to use like a pen name, but just to not provide any name at all. I find that interesting. But if you have not heard of this book was published, I believe, in 2017. It's a fairly recent book. And even though it is titled The Incest Diary, I think a more fitting title would be The Incest Memoir, because that is what it presents itself as. The memoir of an unnamed woman who is recounting her life, in which she was raped and otherwise molested by her father from about, I think, the age of 3 up until she was a woman, basically, and which started out non-consensual, but which eventually evolved into something that's kind of consensual as she developed a kind of reciprocal um, yearning for the abuse that she received, kind of a mutual. It eventually becomes like genuinely like mutual incest, sort of. That's the gist of it. There's more to it than that, but I'm not going to go too far off into that because it gets pretty dicey. Um, but that's the long and short of it. Unnamed woman who recounts her life in which she was horrendously abused by her father, which led to some rather confused emotions within herself, in which kind of understandably scarred her for life. That is, if you believe this, because there are many adjectives which I think could be used to describe this book, such as graphic and disturbing. But one adjective which I think perhaps could be used to describe this would be bullshit, because as other reviewers besides myself, like if you look on Goodreads and look at the reviews there of this book, other people who have read this have been pretty dubious as to this book's veracity. And I kind of incline that way myself for a couple of reasons. One, the level of abuse that this woman purportedly received is such that I don't think that you could hide this. Like, there's a part when she's like 9-ish, I think, where her father like rapes her with knives and stuff. Needless to say, lacerating her in a rather delicate area, and she's just like, I just had to hide it until it healed. And I was like, no, I don't think that's even possible. I think that's a little bit more than you could feasibly conceal. But then also, um, another aspect of this book that makes me question whether this is actually a true story is that there's just so much. Like, I know some people have it rough out there. I know, a lot of people have some real streaks of bad luck, but I'm hesitant to believe that anybody could possibly have a life as misfortunate as whoever this woman is claims that hers has been, because it's a little much. Once again, reading this book, I was kind of reminded of watching that film like Joker, right? You have a character, it presents a character that it would appear that the entire universe just conspires to shit on. So not only is her father like raping her and molesting her and threatening to kill her and doing just unspeakable acts to her from a very young age, but also her mother has some kind of undisclosed mental condition, and she basically hates her and just demeans and belittles her and treats her like shit. And then whenever she finally does like tell somebody about the abuse, they're just like, walk it off, rub some dirt on it. And then she later gets raped again. This woman is just like the most unfortunate woman ever, I guess, because later when she's an adult, she gets raped. She says that she worked at a museum and that she had to go pick up something from one of the donors to the museum, and then he like raped her. And it's weird because she calls that date rape, and I'm like, no, that's not date rape. That's just good old fashioned rape. Anyway, so she gets raped by him, and then she goes to the hospital and has like a rape kit done and stuff, and then she tells her boss at the museum. They're like, "What happened?" And she's like, "Oh, he raped me," and they're just like, "Well, we'll pay for therapy." And I'm like, "That's it?" Like, first of all, she went to the hospital. They have the DNA at the hospital, and then she told you what happened, and you're just like, "Ah, we'll pay for therapy." I mean, what about prosecution? I mean, whatever. It seems a little um, unusual behavior. That is not how I would expect people to act in that situation. But then she eventually marries this guy who seems to be a pretty nice guy. Um, and she tells him about what her dad did to her growing up. And he's like, "Oh wow, that's horrible." But then, like, they have regular dinners with her father. Like, they go to see him and eat dinner with him and chat. And I'm like, I don't think I would do that myself. Like, even like if I'm her husband, um, even if she's like brainwashed and traumatized beyond hope, and that she's just running back to this guy who did this to her. Like, if I'm her husband, I'm not gonna go spend time with the guy who my wife told me spent her childhood raping her, unless it's just to beat some ass, which it sounds like this guy, whoever her dad is, desperately needed. But yeah, so I'm not. That's another thing that I don't think I like her. Maybe because obviously she is so jacked in the head because of all this. If you believe it again, that I can understand her going back to her dad, but like not me. But speaking for myself, like if I'm her husband, I'm not doing that. Like unless we're gonna crack some skulls, I don't think that I would go voluntarily to spend time with the man that tormented and raped my wife. That's just me. And also at the end of this, she after she divorces the guy, whoever it was that she married, she gets into another relationship with this guy who is like an abuser in his own right, and like the book ends just with her. I cannot even like describe some of the acts that she describes in this book, because this video will get taken down real quick. But like, her new lover is not a good guy, and he's like, it ends very nastily. I'll say that. I will just leave you with that. This book ends very nastily. It does not get better. It ends very bleakly as well. So, yeah, I'm skeptical as to the veracity of this story. I am skeptical. However, let me talk now about the technical aspects of the book. So, the book is written in a style that is very blunt and punchy. It's kind of a very simplistic style of writing, kind of short, blunt sentences, um, not very flowery at all. And while normally I would kind of say that's a knock against it, in this particular instance, it actually serves the story quite well. Regardless of whether this is true or fabricated, the manner of the writing of this, the manner in which it is told, is such that it actually kind of serves the story well by conveying an emotionless and kind of removed, withdrawn um, perspective. What I was really like made to think of reading this was like anhedonia, right? It's like someone who has been traumatized and like pushed past the point of feeling anything. Like, and there's precious little reflection in this. This is not a story where the woman, whoever she is like, and this is when I realized I was messing up again, or it was at this point that I understood this or that. Like, there's precious little of that. It's just a recounting of mountains of trauma, with no real or very little judgment passed on any of it. Um, and by the way, the manner in which it is recounted is the most explicit possible. This is essentially pornography, child pornography, I guess, because it does not pull any punches. It does not hold anything back. It uses the most crass, crude street language to describe these horrendous acts perpetrated on a very young child. This, needless to say, trigger warnings galore for this book. This is not a book that I think, whether it's true or not, this is not a book that I think a lot of people will be able to handle reading, because it truly is disturbing. And the characters, well, there really is only one. It's the narrator. And again, it's basically just like an anhedonic portrayal, just kind of beyond hope at this point emotionally. Um, Very striking, I'll say that. Very striking narrative voice. And the story, it's loosely chronological, but it kind of jumps around a lot. And it's basically just a parade of horrors. Basically, it is very, very disturbing. But I will say this: whether or not this book is true, and again, I'm rather skeptical that it could be. Um, it has an effect. It has a very strong effect, because I have to say this for the Incest Diary. The Incest Diary is one of the very few books that I've ever read that left me feeling truly dirty after reading this. Like, this kind of stains your soul reading this. And again, it may be complete bullshit. It may not have a lick of truth to it at all. Or it may be completely true, even though, some of it I don't really know how it could be. And it's kind of just a bit much at times. But whatever the case, like, it sticks with you. Like, I really did feel just dirty after reading this. It stains your soul. It makes you feel like you need a very long shower. It has an impact. So I'll say that. So as a memoir, I'm skeptical, but as a work of literature more broadly, um, it's effective, if nothing else, in a visceral capacity. So to rate the Incest Diary, I think I'm going to give this a B. Again, once more, I'm skeptical as to whether all or any of this is actually factual. And even if it's not, it is not something I think you will likely forget after reading. I think this is a book that will stick with you long after you've read it. So, based on that alone, I'm going to give it a B. Yeah, The Incest Diary by Anonymous. Have you read The Incest Diary? If you have, let me know down in the comments what you thought about it, whether you have agreed or disagreed with anything that I've said here today. And if you haven't read The Incest Diary, I will not recommend this except with great discretion, because I really do think that a lot of people with more sensitive constitutions will not be able to handle reading this, because it goes there. And if you want to know where there is, then you just have to read the book. But just trust me when I say it goes there. It is one of the most graphic, explicit, no holds barred things I've ever read. And again, it may just be completely fictitious, but either way, it kind of sears itself into your psyche. So, like I said, I will not recommend this except with the greatest of discretion, because this is not a book for everybody, or probably for most people. But yeah, As always, if you have enjoyed anything you've seen or heard here today, remember to hit that like button and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, peace.